Welcome to the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast, the show where brilliant professionals share how to sharpen the universal skills required to flourish at work. Enjoy more career fun, wins, meaning, and money with your host, Pete Makaitis.
Hello, and thanks for joining us here for episode 868 with Christine Porath. Christine has some really cool examples and insights on community, how to build it, what are the benefits of it, experiencing it at work, and how it can just change the whole experience and be so grand. So you'll learn 1, the astounding benefits of a sense of community, 2, the one thing to avoid with community building activities, and 3, how vulnerability leads to richer communities. So if you want to check out the show notes or the transcript or the links to items that we've referenced, please visit us over at awesomeatyourjob.com/EP868. And maybe check out some of our resources like the Gold Nugget email summaries, the 10 Days to Winning at Work course, full text searchable transcripts, and a lot of other goodies at awesomeatyourjob.com. Now here's a bit about Christine. Christine is a tenured professor at Georgetown University's McDonough School of Business. She's the author of Mastering Civility, a Manifesto for the Workplace, and co-author of The Cost of Bad Behavior. Christine is a frequent contributor to the Harvard Business Review and has written articles for the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and many others. She frequently delivers talks and has taught in various executive programs at Harvard, Georgetown, and USC. Prior to her position at Georgetown, she was a faculty member at University of Southern California's Marshall School of Business. Christine's work has been featured worldwide in over 1,500 television, radio, and print outlets. It has appeared on 2020, Today, Fox News, CNN, BBC, NBC, and many more. Big thanks to Christine for sharing her wisdom with us, and big thanks to our sponsors. Check them out. One sponsor to check out is Storyworth. Whenever I'm thinking about meaningful Father's Day gifts, Storyworth leaps to mind. Storyworth helps you preserve precious memories and stories from your father for years to come. Each week, Storyworth emails your loved ones a thought-provoking question that you get to help pick, such as, what's the bravest thing you've ever done? I personally love the prompt so much that I have refreshed Storyworth's questions page many times looking for more. Storyworth makes the writing process super quick and easy. All your loved one needs to do is respond to that email with a story, and then you get a quick copy of that. And after a year of this fun, Storyworth compiles your loved one's stories and photos into a beautiful keepsake hardcover book that you'll be able to share and revisit for generations to come. Families love Storyworth so much, they've got 25,000 five-star reviews on Trustpilot and have millions of stories preserved. So give all the fathers in your life a unique, heartfelt gift they'll all cherish for years. Storyworth. Right now, you can save $10 on your first purchase when you go to storyworth.com/awesome. That's storyworth.com/awesome to save $10 on your first purchase. One sponsor to check out is Harvard Business Review. This brilliant magazine, published at hbr.org, is the leading destination for smart management thinking. Fun fact, HBR has been mentioned in 108 episodes of the show. That's because HBR has great stuff that comes up often. They've got explainer videos, podcasts, real-world case studies, and much more. I think of HBR each night that I put on my special orange glasses. Their article, Will Blue Light Glasses Improve Your Sleep?, revealed that those who wore them reported better sleep and a 7% improvement in work performance as compared to those who wore the sham glasses. So I cite HBR anytime anyone tells me that I look silly wearing them. Now, much of HBR's content is available for free when you sign up at their site. Subscriptions that get you unlimited content cost $10 a month. If you visit hbr.org/subscriptions and enter the promo code AWESOME, you can save 10% off of that subscription. Again, to save 10% off of your HBR subscription, go to www.hbr.org/subscriptions and enter the promo code AWESOME. And big thanks to our sponsor, Acorns. Acorns makes it easy to start automatically saving and investing for your future. You don't need a lot of money or expertise to invest with Acorns. In fact, you can get started with just your spare change. Acorns recommends an expert-built portfolio that fits you and your money goals, then automatically invests your money for you. NerdWallet.com, whom I love on these sorts of matters, gives Acorns a whopping 4.7 stars and says, quote, if you want to make the most of your spare change, there's no better place to do that than Acorns. Head to acorns.com/awesome or download the Acorns app to start saving and investing for your future today. And we got a legal disclaimer here. It may not be representative of all clients. Tier 1 compensation provided. Compensation provides an incentive to positively promote Acorns. View important disclosures at acorns.com/awesome. Investing involves risk, including the loss of principal. Please consider your objectives, risk tolerance, and Acorns' fees before investing. Acorns Advisors LLC, Acorns, is an SEC-registered investment advisor. Brokerage services are provided to clients of Acorns by Acorns Securities LLC, member FINRA/SIPC. For more information, visit acorns.com. Now, here's Christine. Christine, welcome to How to Be Awesome at Your Job.
Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to dig into your wisdom and hear some juicy tidbits from your latest Mastering Community, the surprising ways coming together moves us from surviving to thriving. So for starters, could you maybe share with us a really cool story that has some nifty surprises that illustrates what's up with community, like what's at stake and what's possible and what's the goodness that we might want to be able to tap into?
Sure. So it really was inspired by my brother and sister-in-law's story. So in 2008, my brother Mike and his wife Sarah had a truly terrible, life-changing day. In the morning, a doctor informed them that their unborn child was missing a kidney and possibly other organs. And then in the afternoon, they returned home and there was even more devastating news. They had learned from their doctor that their 2-year-old daughter, Annabelle, had a rare chromosome disorder, DUP15Q, and her mind would probably not develop beyond that of a 5-year-old. And so, feeling lost and scared, my brother turned to Google to try to learn more about this diagnosis. And most of the guidance he found online wasn't that helpful, but he clicked an old PDF file containing 6 stories from parents whose children experienced similar disabilities. And the stories contained joy and humor, and they offered reason for hope. And if these parents could cope with these disabilities and even find some joy in the process, maybe Mike and his wife figured they could too. And after conquering another parenting challenge with Annabelle, just a couple months later, Mike realized that solutions could be simple because he had, again, posted online to try to get answers. And that's where he found them. There was a woman who posted how to teach a child a pincher grasp, how to pick up foods, which Annabelle was struggling with. And what Mike realized after trying what she suggested, which was cutting 2 holes, a sock for a forefinger, a sock for a thumb, and putting Annabelle's favorite food in the tray, that it didn't take very long, less than a month, for Annabelle to master that. And so through those instances, Mike realized that oftentimes lived experience rather than professional expertise can go a long way. And wasn't it wonderful that communities, in this case of parents, suffering with similar disabilities or diagnoses, were helping each other? And so in 2014, Mike and Sarah bootstrapped a new venture called The Mighty, which is a digital media company connecting people facing disease, disabilities, disorders. And since then, The Mighty has grown from, just a tiny tribe of people to several million people that connect online to help each other, lift each other up. And one of the things that I learned from Mike was that while groups under The Mighty were created to address specific needs, beyond that, they were really solving for the problem of isolation and loneliness. And I think too many people, I realized, even in the workplace, feel like Mike did, alone or disconnected and suffering. And it was just really inspiring to me to see how they were able to build community from the ground up and how it's helped so many people. And since I study stuff in the workplace and got a frontline seat to how that evolved, I just was seeing data saying too many people don't feel any sense of community, about 65% at work. And this was all pre-pandemic, of course. And so I just felt like we could and should do better. And what could we learn from The Mighty and other places like it?
Well, so a couple quick clarifiers. 65% don't feel any sense of community anywhere or at work?
At work.
Okay, gotcha. And this pincer grasp, not that it's a parenting podcast, but I got to know. So I get a sock and I cut 2 holes in it, and then that's the trick? Is like, oh, you got 2 fingers to work with?
That's the trick. And you put a sock on the other hand, so there's no cheating involved. And then you have at it. You put favorite food in a tray, and apparently that's the way to get at this. So it was pretty interesting, given that so many physicians and experts and others were trying to help them and nothing was working. And so it was one of those things where, maybe some parents that were facing similar situations knew best.
I really like that a lot. And I guess I'm discovering that nowadays, that when it comes to doing research, what turns up when you ask a friend versus Reddit versus a Facebook group versus Google versus ChatGPT are quite different. And sometimes with the search engines, I don't know how to articulate it, but it seems like the top results are often the ones that have put a lot of effort into becoming the top results in terms of their budgets and their search engine optimizers and all that stuff. And the sock pincer insight is not all that monetizable. And so there's a good chance it'll not find its way onto the front page of search engine results.
Yeah. And so I think one of the things that they learned was just how helpful community can be around similar issues or struggles or that kind of thing. And so I think, we could learn the same from workplace situations as well. What if we had other people to lean on and glean information from who cared about us or cared about our situations?
And so then in workplaces, how does that often materialize? Is it within one workplace, like the employer, like Microsoft or Google? Or is it sort of a community, like an association across many employers? How do you see those things working?
Yeah, well, I think it could be either, but really I was looking to try to, within organizations, try to build community. So at a Microsoft or at a Motley Fool or at a small company that people might be able to really feel a sense of belonging and feel like they mattered, that they cared, that others around them cared about them, and how that could make a real difference on things like engagement. So there was incentives for leaders to pay attention to, were they building communities where people felt connected also?
So let's talk about some of these metrics. Any particularly eye-popping statistics or findings from research? Like, what is the difference that having a great community versus not so much of a community really makes it work?
Yeah, well, we found when people feel connected with their colleagues, they're 74% more engaged and 81% more likely to stay with the organization. They're also far more likely to thrive at work, which we know is connected to performance and things like that. And this was data from over 20,000 people that Tony Schwartz and I collected. So it ranged across different organizations, across different industries. It was global. So fairly generalizable.
Yeah. Tony Schwartz from The Powerful Engagement?
Yes, exactly.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And the Energy Project, where he founded that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we've had him on and he's swell. Okay. So then can you paint a picture for us inside a work context? Do we have a nice illustration of what a great community story looks, sounds, and feels like in practice?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think one that is from a smaller organization that I'm pretty familiar with now is Motley Fool, and they're a best place to work. And, one of the things that they do, I mean, they have lots of fitness challenges, which are fun and that kind of thing, but they organize a lot of events. They, show up for each other. One of the things that they did, I know through the pandemic, was they realized that people like to actually teach one another things that they care about, like hobbies. And so even on Zoom, they might sign up for something that they felt like they could teach people about, and it ranged anywhere from how to knit to butchery type stuff to all different sorts of things. And what they found is that it really created a sense of community, both the person teaching as well as the person learning. And so it was a way to increase engagement driven solely by people and what they wanted to connect with others about. So I liked that because it was really doesn't require a lot of resources, and both the learner and teacher benefit. So that was one that popped.
Mm-hmm. That is fun. Can you share another example?
Sure. I mean, the book is full of examples. I think, one that comes to mind is Marriott has a take care program, and they're global. I mean, after their merger, they have over 700,000 employees. And yet on the ground locally, they have what are called take care ambassadors. And those folks in a particular location, let's say Thailand, on the beach there, they would organize activities that they felt like would contribute to the well-being of their employees, but also the well-being of the community. So they might do something around protection of sea turtles or cleaning up the beach or painting schools that needed that kind of care. But the idea was that they were often doing something for the local community or that would benefit people. They would have painting bike helmets for kids, and so host these events for local citizens and things like that. So I think I've seen a lot of doing good for the outside community, which generates a sense of thriving and pride and feeling connected to their coworkers and their organization in a meaningful way.
Okay. Now I'm curious, in practice, when leaders, either very senior or mid-level in terms of managing a team, hear this stuff and think, ooh, that's cool, we should do that. What are some of the key differentiators that make community building efforts meaningful and enriching and impactful in the ways we're going for versus some that kind of miss the mark or feel fake or off?
Well, I think one that's gone over well is at Traeger, eating together or cooking together. And they really look to, at a new headquarters, they cook together 6 days a week. And I think it's different from necessarily having food on site to try to keep people there for a lot of hours and things like that. But it's literally, they'll make breakfasts, I believe it's on Monday, and then lunches all the other days together. And so from all data and anecdotes shared, that's a really nice value that they benefit from and enjoy each other's company. And there's research behind the fact that cooking together and eating together is a way to form collaboration, get to know each other better, and ends up helping things like performance and so forth. And some of that research was done with firefighters, but I think I've really seen it take root in different organizations in meaningful ways. One differentiator at Traeger might also be the fact that the leaders, including the CEO, Jeremy Andrus, participates and is involved in the Monday meetings that they have, which incorporate a lot of like peer awards for living the values and things like that. So I think that can make a difference. Like leaders not only encouraging certain aspects of, let's say, sustainability or things like that, sustainable work practices, but role model it as well. And so I think that Tony Schwartz, that was another finding that we had among that large data set, was it's really important when leaders not only encourage these practices, but live them as well, setting the tone for it.
Okay. And then do you have some examples of attempts at community gone wrong where the just wasn't landing with folks? Like, yeah, this is kind of lame or awkward or uncomfortable or unnatural, and we don't like this.
I think generally speaking, it's when they're forced and mandatory.
Okay. We're all having fun now.
Yeah, exactly. That you have to participate, that these are after hour events, that you feel like if you're not there, it's, punishable kind of thing. But those are the ones that come to mind. It's almost like the forced workplace. You have to do work from the office versus, having some flexibility. So similarly, I think around community events, like ideally people have some choice around them.
Yeah. I remember one time at work, we went golfing. And so I made it very clear that I straight up don't know how to play golf. And that when I've attempted, it went very poorly in terms of like divots everywhere. So like, just so we're clear. And so they're like, oh, you'll be fine. I was like, well, I mean, okay, if you say so. I mean, I've told you sort of what's going to happen. And then I did it. And they were very frustrated with me. And they're like, no, we got to let them play through. You're slowing us down. I was like, but I kind of told you that was how this was going to go. So I found that very uncomfortable and unpleasant in terms of that experience, as opposed to, I don't know, either choosing a different activity that everyone likes or just say, okay, well, hey, check this out. Well, you can hang out on the golf cart and goof around and, have some drinks. I don't know, whatever. And enjoy things that way, even if the actual swinging of the club isn't in the cards for the day. So that's a good point. So there's a choice. It's not mandatory. And it seems like with the cooking example that's come up before, it's like folks are doing stuff collaboratively. And So I think there's probably some magic there. I'm thinking now about Bob Cialdini and his stuff about like singing and or dancing in unison does cool stuff. That might be harder to, I don't know, depending on the vibe of your workplace, folks might be really into that or not at all. And so I guess that's maybe one of the themes is that this will be very, very individualistic for individuals and teams based on what vibes for them.
Yeah, I think I really like your example of having some choice around different activities, for example. I've seen that go over really well. Or even if you plan an event, like I attended one at a Major League Baseball park that they rented out the area where you can eat together and so forth. And you could tour the field. This was an evening activity. The batting cages were open. So it was really fun for those of us that wanted to take a crack at, swinging against some pitchers. But you didn't have to. You could hang out and eat or drink with others. You could walk around and tour the facilities. So it could be a number of different things that you could do, even though, there was a large room together where people could hang out. So it provided a little bit of choose your own path, depending on your interests and your abilities and so forth, that seemed to go over really well as far as, most people being happy with the choices and that kind of thing. So I think that choice element that you highlighted is really key if possible. And I know for like offsites, oftentimes what they'll do is just people can choose out of 3, 4, 5 activities. And I think that's a really nice way to promote, inclusivity as well. The idea that depending on your capabilities, cultural differences, interests, those kind of things, you're providing a number of different paths for people.
Okay. So beyond the activities or the outings, are there any other key ingredients in the mix for having great communities at work?
I mean, I think anytime that you can promote healthier living, it's and provide some sense of whether it's recovery or rejuvenation or things like that, those are wins as well. I mean, I think of Kelly McGonigal's The Joy of Movement and the idea of, that's a nice thing for people that are interested in that, but there are amplifiers like doing it together, doing it in nature, doing it to music, things like that. And so, one of the examples that I shared was a woman who actually started a program at Dell at the time around just because people were gaining a lot of weight, they weren't feeling very good. She started covering them for working out an hour each day. And it ended up becoming Thrive was the program, but people couldn't wait to be a part of it. And I think part of it was it also broke down barriers, she said, of you might have a leader running next to someone that was in the call center. And it tended to break down silos in the organization and cultivate relationships among people that might not have otherwise known each other or gotten to meet one another. And so that was a real positive, as well as people became far healthier as in terms of practices and things like that. So that was a nice example that I liked a lot. It doesn't work for everyone, but I think it overall had a lot of positive effects for various individuals and team performance shot up and things like that. So even though that they were working less or had the capability to work less, given time off to take a break, to work out, things like that, then overall it was a real win for the organization.
And you also mentioned Radical Candor. We had Kim Scott on the show and she was swell. But what role does that play in building community? And can you give us some examples?
Yeah, I mean, I love Kim Scott's work on Radical Candor. And some of the examples that I share in the book actually tie to Kelly Leonard, who's at Second City. And he and Kim partnered to teach people radical candor through improvisation and the idea that, we're all work in progress. But I think radical candor, when people know that you care personally, there's more liberty to challenge directly. And I think that that's a positive as far as we want people sharing feedback. We want people basically coaching each other up, like helping people improve. And a great way to do that is through radical candor, given how negative feedback is often awkward for a lot of us. And so if you can develop a spirit of radical candor, it really helps quite a bit. And one of the examples that I liked in the book came from Krista Quarles, who at the time was CEO of Open Table. And one of the things that she shared was she learned she had to give it to get it. In other words, she had to, be vulnerable and share when she has messed up or needed feedback. And that kind of broke down some of the barriers such that people were able to see, okay, she can handle that kind of criticism or direct feedback and what happens if we use it. But I think she also had to encourage it along the way, suggesting that, listen, we want to, failure's okay. Like through failure, we will learn. So some of that criticism is actually welcome because it's going to get us to a better place more quickly. And so I thought she handled things really well. And if folks were not comfortable speaking up, one of the things that she did was pull them aside, like this very talented woman who just was reluctant to speak up in a group. And she coached her effectively. And she just let her know, listen, like if I need to, I'll tee you up for this, but we need you. Like we need your voice. We need you involved. And it really went a long way to developing her. But more importantly, at the time, also what the team and the organization needed. And so I thought it was an excellent example of, leader as a coach and getting involved to kind of get the ball rolling for people to be radically candid in ways that maybe didn't come naturally, but they needed to break out of what Krista Quarles called, ruinous empathy, or this idea of not speaking up because you don't want to hurt someone, which is the most common mistake. I think Kim says that about 85% of the mistakes are in that arena.
Okay. And speaking of mistakes, we talked about not having the forced fun. Is there any other top do's and don'ts you'd highlight if folks are thinking, yeah, I would like to kick up some community at work? What do you recommend as being some of the very first things they do and they don't do?
Well, I think the idea of uniting people and providing a safe space for people to communicate is huge. And leaders can set the tone for that by being vulnerable, admitting mistakes, admitting failures, things like that. But one of the examples that I use at the beginning of the book is just an example of Phil Jackson, who you may know coaching the Chicago Bulls for all those years and winning so many championships. But Steve Kerr talked about one of the things that brought them to be such a tight-knit team was the idea that every day they met in Phil's kind of film room, so to speak, but they wouldn't talk about basketball or the X's and O's. It was all about connecting. And so I think that idea of, are you providing a safe space where people are communicating and getting to know each other in different ways? That could be around activities. It could be around cooking, like we talked about. There are so many different ideas behind that. But I think bringing people together and trying to create a place where people can be vulnerable is really huge. So I liked that example for the idea that just get people talking, sharing information, and that kind of thing. Another example that I liked was Chuck Robbins at Cisco and the idea of having a conscious culture. And one of the things that they did, again, well before the pandemic, was they had a program called Love and Loathe. And the idea was that people would be providing how they were doing. So just a quick pulse survey, and the leader would get that data and could really quickly address it. So if someone was struggling or not having a good week, a leader could check in really quickly around that. And so I think it's helping to create touch points between leaders and their direct reports, or even peers for that matter. But the idea being, I think people need those kind of little lifts. And so the more that the leader can create these touch points through the day, which Doug Conant talks about quite a bit and has a book on touch points, and really turned an organization, Campbell's Soup, around with touch points, that would be a really good mode to kind of jumpstart things. It doesn't take a lot of time. These were moments that Doug talked about in the hallways and meetings in the cafeteria. And it was all about connecting with people. And you listened attentively. He would often try to leverage his expertise and then close with, how can I help? And those kind of moments really made a difference. Another one that Doug talked about, which I love, was he ended up sending 30,000 thank you notes while CEO of Campbell's. And I think that's something that, especially nowadays, where people may be feeling a little beat down or a little negative or, just struggling coming off of the pandemic. Well, I mean, even before that, this was important. But the point is that these thank you notes made a huge difference in making people feel valued. And so those small things can make a huge difference in employees' lives and get them engaged, retain them in organizations. And it was kind of fun. I had a friend that a few months ago was traveling on a plane and sat behind a gentleman who was raving about where he worked at Campbell's and the fact that 15 years ago, a CEO had written this lowly salesperson a thank you note. And so again, 15 years later, someone's still talking about this, still proud of the company, the connections, the sense of community that he felt because of this action. So I think that small actions can make a huge difference, and you don't have to be a leader for that to happen.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. Oh, Christine, tell me anything else you want to make sure to mention before we shift gears and hear about some of your favorite things?
I mean, I think the idea of Ubuntu and, I am who I am because of who we all are. I liked that idea a lot. And as you may be able to tell, I like sports examples a lot. So, I shared an example of Doc Rivers turning around the Boston Celtics at the time with this rallying cry. But I also loved the example, and it was actually the woman, Carla Pinheiro Sablet, who I shared the Dell story about, who, found that by taking time out and traveling with her family, not wired into technology and things like that, she and her family really felt much greater sense of connectedness. And I think for her, it was kind of putting away the technology even for short periods of time and really trying to connect with people. And again, it could be short, over coffee, over meal. It could be in the backyard over campfire, what have you. But the point being that the importance of maybe disconnecting from all of our tasks, the technology, so that we can connect better and feel a sense of community. So again, I think that that's something that doesn't necessarily require huge resources, but is an action that could make a big difference in our lives as far as the quality of connection and community that we feel.
All right. Thank you. Now, could you share a favorite quote, something you find inspiring?
I have one quote at the beginning of the book that I like a lot that's actually from Brené Brown. And it's just the idea of unlocking our potential. So I believe it is, you can't unlock potential if you cannot unlock people. And so she's written about this, which I love.
Okay. And a favorite study or experiment or bit of research?
I think you hit on the radical candor part that I talk a lot about with respect to respect. The other bit is just how rudeness or incivility is contagious. And so I often cite that but the good news is civility is contagious as well. And so again, kind of pointing to small actions and how, for better or worse, they have a lot of different ripple effects and can change how our communities feel. So I hope that it's empowering for people.
All right. And a favorite book?
Man's Search for Meaning.
Mm-hmm. And a favorite tool?
I like Tony Schwartz's energy audit and or more generally, just checking in to see how you feel throughout the day and making adjustments accordingly.
All right. And a favorite habit?
For me, it's probably working out, ideally in the morning, to get a jump start and feeling good.
Okay. And is there a key nugget you share that really seems to connect and resonate with folks? They quote it back to you often?
I use an example of the 10-5 way, which was if people were within 10 feet, they smiled and made eye contact. If they were within 5 feet, they said hello. And what Ochsner Healthcare System found is that people felt a stronger sense of civility, but also patient satisfaction scores rose, as did patient referrals. And so I just like the idea that it kind of shows how contagion happens, even outside of the organization, in ways that really help people within and outside organizations to kind of lift them up.
Mm-hmm. And if folks want to learn more or get in touch, where would you point them?
Probably LinkedIn. So just Christine Porath. And I'm on Twitter, PorathC.
Okay. And do you have a final challenge or call to action for folks looking to be awesome at their jobs?
I mean, I think the idea of think about who do you want to be in different moments and just what can we do to lift others up throughout our day.
All right. Christine, this has been a treat. Thank you. I wish you much luck and good community.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be on your show.
I really appreciate Christine's point about you when you're the leader or even just talking first. Sharing that vulnerability provides the permission for others to do the same, creating that sense of safety, rich conversations, and so much good stuff. Again, the show notes, the transcript, and the links to items that we've referenced are at awesomeatyourjob.com/EP868. Hope to catch you next time. And peace.
Thanks for listening. To get the most out of the show, we recommend 2 key things. First, check out the extra resources at awesomeatyourjob.com. You can find this episode's transcript and links, as well as the perfect episode for your situation. You can search the full text transcripts of hundreds of episodes or explore episodes tagged by topic and competency covered. Second, subscribe to the podcast and get future episodes automatically. You can subscribe by telling Siri and several other smartphones and speakers, subscribe to the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast, or by tapping subscribe in your podcast player of choice. If you'd like some extra help figuring out podcasts and how subscriptions work, visit awesomeatyourjob.com/subscribe for guidance. Hope to catch you on the next episode of How to Be Awesome at Your Job.